Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jen Jordan, and I lead content and thought leadership at Insight Partners. I also organize our ScaleUp AI conference coming up on November 12th, which features keynotes from Ali K. Miller and Andrew Ng. As a preview to this fantastic event coming up shortly, I'm excited to introduce this fireside discussion today. We have Leapsome co-founder and co-CEO Jenny Podevils and Insight Partners Managing Director Rebecca Lou Doyle. During our session today, we're pleased to offer 35% off a virtual ticket for ScaleUp AI, courtesy of Leapsome. The code and the website will appear right here during the chat. So with that, please welcome our speakers to the stage. Over to you, Rebecca.
Welcome to ScaleUp AI Soundbites, an engaging series of AI-centric LinkedIn Live sessions featuring prominent leaders from Insight Partners' portfolio that are shaping the future of AI. These talks set the stage for ScaleUp AI, one of the first global conferences that brings together the top AI builders, executives, luminaries, and innovators. Insight Partners is thrilled that our portfolio company, Leapsome, is a ScaleUp AI partner this year, and that I have the opportunity to interview their co-CEO and co-founder, Jenny, today. All right, Jenny, welcome. So excited to have you.
Thank you so much. Very excited about this and also very much about the event in a few weeks.
Yes. So to start, can you just give us a brief overview of Leapsome?
Yes, very happy to do so. So Leapsome is the AI-powered platform that drives HR excellent and high-performing teams. So our purpose at Leapsome is actually to make work fulfilling for everyone, something very important. And our Leapsome platform actually spans tools from performance management to employee engagement to goal management to learning and also wider HR processes. And Leapsome's different in the way that we deeply care about building software that's intuitive and easy to use, not just for the HR admin, but also very much for the manager and the employee. And it's this usability advantage that ultimately drives adoption. And our benchmark for ourselves is always to make sure we don't want to build shelfware, we want to build software that's actually being used on a very, very active basis. And the other thing that's different about us compared to other HR platforms is we leverage AI technology throughout the platform in our users' daily work. So this drives the users' productivity and impact and makes it easy to actually adopt and also thereby benefit from the HR technology that's available within any kinds of managerial and HR processes. And we're used by over 1,500 customers, predominantly North America and Europe. That includes both like smaller company, but also very established tech companies such as like a Monday.com, also portfolio company of Insight, as well as more established players like Mercedes-Benz, for example.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So taking a step back, why do you think that it's especially important for executives to be focused on building high-performing teams right now in the current environment?
I mean, we've seen like the technology industry has seen some rougher years that we've been going through. And if we come back to the fundamentals, there's key studies, multiple studies that actually demonstrate that high-performing teams and strong cultures are a huge driver for the company's success and also the enterprise value. There's one like specific top-tier sort of quantitative study that was actually published in peer-reviewed journals by Edmonds in 2011. And it could actually demonstrate, and there's other similar studies, that companies with high-performing teams, in particular strong culture, actually outperform their peers by 3.5% annually. So that's 3.5% every single year. So with the cumulative effects thereof, if you think about a tech company maybe having like a 10-year time period between being founded and an exit, that's a 40% difference in the value of that company. So if your company is 100 million at exit after 10 years, it could actually be 140 million. If your exit is $1 billion, it could actually be a 400 million difference at exit. So it's like fundamental driver of business success to get the culture and the high-performing team motion, the operating rhythm of the system built up well. So it's a lot of potential value that can be distributed between founders, executive investors, as well as the participating employees. And I think what that ultimately shows us is that building high-performing teams and good culture is absolutely not a nice to have. It's a fundamental driver of business success. It's a fundamental driver of enterprise value. And this is why it's a key priority for the CEO, for executives, for investors. That's why we really need to care about how do we get this right.
Absolutely. And of course, it's a key priority for the CEO herself or himself to build high-performing teams. Who else is responsible for this? Who supports the CEO in doing this?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. Who are the key partners to the CEO in building this high-performing team, this high-performing organization, a good company culture? It's ultimately, there's two fundamental partners in that. One is pretty much everyone who leads people. So the leaders, the managers, like everyone who's in some shape or form actually managing other people in the company. And then the second cohort, or the second really important partner to the CEO, is ultimately the HR function, the CPO, the VP people, and the underlying team. And I think what's interesting is when we think about that manager effectiveness and HR excellence, actually is a fundamental driver of the ability to execute strategy, of the ability to actually build the high-performing team and effective culture. We need to make sure that everybody's truly set up in this partnership to actually drive this motion and make it successful. And that's where the caveat comes into place. If we look at the data, managers and HR teams are actually under a lot of pressure in the current environment. And we always do an annual research report, an annual study, and we've just recently completed our study this year, and we've surveyed over 2,500 professionals, both in North America, particularly in the US, and in Europe. And what our research actually showed is that half of HR teams are facing budget cuts in the last year. And that has impacted both their ability to drive initiatives, to invest into tooling, as well as the size of their teams. So the HR teams in general are under a lot of pressure. In addition, what this research also showed is that 71% of managers actually report that their workload has increased yet again in the past year. I think we've seen a lot of additional workload on managers already in COVID, with the drive to hybrid, remote, sort of like new learning and new motion. And just in the last year, 71% of managers say again that their workload has actually increased quite significantly. And that leads to actually 6 in 10 managers reporting the feeling of feeling overwhelmed. So that's quite interesting if like your strongest sort of like partners as an executive, as an CEO, to get this motion right, under a lot of pressure. So how do we actually support them to ultimately really get this job done well? And this is really where we need to think about how can we more effectively support managers and HR teams alike in getting this important job of building high-performing team, of building strong cultures right. And this is where AI can be such a powerful tool to actually support these groups to actually get this job done better. So I think that's really the exciting opportunity at our fingertips to really get this job done better.
Yeah. So say more on that. How can technology broadly, and more specifically, how can AI help in this task?
Yeah, that's a great question. So AI can be a huge lever in reshaping HR strategies and delivering HR excellence. So if we think about generative AI agents, actually offer really valuable insights that can help HR teams make faster, more data-driven decisions. It can actually help free up time by taking over more administrational workload to then actually use that time or invest it into sort of maybe higher order activities that really help to engage, develop, train the teams, return turnover risks, and really drive organizational success. And when we look back at Leapsome, or what we've really working towards is building out our AI functionality with this in mind, like what can we take off the plate for managers and HR teams, help them to get their work done better, and thereby actually ultimately enable them to really build these high-performing teams and companies. And when we think back about the research, or look back into the research we've just done, there's actually 4 specific AI use cases that HR teams come back to and say over and over again, like, this is where we need help. This is where we can be most enabled. The first one is actually administrative automation, or like automation of administrative processes. So one example would be running or like preparing a career framework, right? A lot of employees nowadays, companies don't grow as fast as they used to in the past. So people still want to have clarity. What's an additional sort of like skill I can develop? What do I need to do to still be promoted in the future into this next role? And building out these career frameworks is actually a lot of work. But nowadays, it's actually much easier to do a lot of these preparatory work and get like to an 80-90% version that you need to then, you can then tweak. But that's kind of like a very tangible thing that the HR professionals ask for. The second one is data analysis, right? We started to collect a lot of data over the past years. One example is crunching survey results data, like understanding the data, gathering insights in minutes. That's something where technology and generative AI agents can actually help HR teams to have that data, better understand that data and make it more actionable. Third one is supporting writing and analyzing feedback and performance data. That's just something where previous feedback, additional sort of like contextual data can really help make that process a lot sort of like a lot easier, a lot faster. And the fourth one is actually supporting decision making. So for example, if you run a survey or you analyze your data, understanding the so what, like what's next, generating an action plan based on best practices. These are kind of the 4 specific asks that have come up in that research over and over again. And to bring it back to Leapsome, as I mentioned, Leapsome is the AI-powered people platform that drives HR excellence and high-performing teams. So like delivering or like implementing AI capabilities within our platform has been a high focus for us over the past couple of years in particular. And we have, for example, if we think about the manager persona, implemented an AI co-pilot that helps managers to be more effective in their roles of managers. It helps them to run more effective meetings, to have a hard conversation, maybe prepare for that hard conversation. If I'm writing performance reviews, to actually write them faster based on my previous notes, maybe on peer feedback, on instant feedback I've collected throughout the year or the quarter. It helps me to draft better goals. Like if I want someone on my team to become better in project management, it actually helps me to come up with a plan, specific initiatives that actually help that person to ultimately achieve this development goal. Or it helps me to interpret and act on survey data for my team, for my department. And our AI co-pilot has all the contextual data on myself as the manager, on my team, on the organization, from performance, from surveys, from goals. So that becomes like a really, really effective agent to actually help me to get my managerial role done better and really build and drive that high-performing team. Or if we think about the HR persona as the other sort of persona we've discussed, it again equips the HR team to run more effectively, to get more done. It helps them to design and run many HR processes. The one we've, for example, discussed already helps them build up a career framework, a competency framework in a lot less time. It helps analyze the survey data to understand like what's going on in the organization, but then to take better decision because it can generate an action plan, actionable next steps, and really help to also not just have the data, but actually work with it strategically. So it's really making a lot of the processes that used to take hours, days, maybe at times even weeks, and really comprise them into like it's done within minutes, and then I can work with it, I can tweak it, and that actually gives me a lot more opportunity as an HR team to work more effectively, to achieve true HR excellence, and to really build out these high-performing organizations. So to team up with the CEO to get this job done much more effectively than in the past.
So these all sound like incredibly powerful applications of AI. But why do you think they should live within a platform like Leapsome versus as a standalone feature, or maybe even as part of a different solution?
Yeah, love that question. I think it's interesting because coming back to the research, and I just quoting it so many times because I think it was just really, really interesting what came out of it. 80% of the managers we surveyed actually said they use AI technology several times a week, often even daily. And 83% of managers and HR leaders actually reported it's making them more effective in their roles. But then when we also interviewed or like surveyed ICs, they actually only said like 42% of ICs said they're actually also leveraging AI on like at least a weekly level. And this was actually in our survey, we focused on the technology industry and the consulting, sort of professional services industries. So even in technology and professional services consulting companies, only 42% of ICs actually leverage this technology at their fingertips. So we actually still have a huge adoption gap in the world of work and our economies. And this is why I think it's really, really interesting to think very strategically for what kind of AI sort of use cases, what layer actually works best. Is it the LLM layer, like do I directly interact with, maybe let's take ChatGPT as an example, or do I go to the platform layer, or do I use one of these very narrow AI tools that are bubbling up? And I think specifically for the processes that we actually support, the functionalities that are embedded in the tools that you use very regularly as an HR professional or as a manager in your managerial role is actually the most powerful layer. So that's the Leapsome layer, that's the platform layer. And I think there's 3 fundamental reasons for that. Why actually I think our layer is the most effective, both in terms of adoption, but also generating thereby the best impact for the company and the people. And if we go through them one by one, the first one very much links to what workflow are we embedded in and what interface is the user sort of part of. So our AI functionalities, our agents are actually directly integrated into some of the key workflows, processes, into the interface that the user generally uses. So for example, if I'm a manager and I'm writing a performance review, I don't need to like take my notes, copy them into like ChatGPT, prompt it in like an elegant way, copy it back. But all of that actually happens partially already under the hood, but also like in the interface when I'm already writing my review. So I think that's like a massive driver of actually making it much easier, much faster, and building my habits, making it part of like my regular sort of like adoption process. We might even not realize it's AI like a few years down the line because it's so immersed and sort of like learned and natural in that particular process in the platform. So I think that's the first one, like really staying close to the original workflow, the process and in the actual interface. And the second one is maybe even the more powerful one is relevant contextual data. So while we obviously also use like a standard LLM kind of like under the hood, we empower our generative AI agent with the specific employee data, the performance review data, the goal data, the survey data, the meeting data, the career path, the learning, like you can name it, pretty much all the data that's accessible. And so that actually enables the AI agent based on this contextual data to generate much more relevant responses. And I don't need to like give a lot of context in like a ChatGPT because it's already there, like it's done for you by the platform layer. And what's also important, especially because we deal with employee data, like that's highly sensitive data, right? We can also ensure that the visibility rights like are maintained through that sort of like contextual data. So depending on who uses a specific AI agent, the respective visibility rights are still applied. So I think that's also something like not just making the contextual data available, but also making sure that all the visibility rights, the roles are fully maintained. That's also something that just makes it really, really powerful to stay at this platform layer and having this sort of like broad data available at the same time. And finally, the third point, because we have the contextual data and we're integrated into the workflow, we can actually to some extent predict what might be some of the most valuable use cases for you to use the AI for in that specific process, in that specific setting. So rather than just giving folks like a empty chat window, we can actually generate smart actions, like suggested questions. So we can actually make it, like, again, in the interest of having true impact and actually adapting and benefiting from this technology by giving you specific smart actions or questions, like just making it very, very easy to use the technology. Just an example to make that tangible. If I'm a department leader, I'm like the VP sales, for example, and I'm looking at the survey data, and I'm looking at the big heat map of data with different dimensions. There's like the AI window already in the corner of my screen on Leapsome, and it actually gives me a smart action. Like, would you like me to summarize the survey data? And if I sort of like use that smart action, I get like a really lovely executive summary of the key takeaways, the insight, the next actions. It really helps me to even like gather this data and understand it much quicker in my role as VP sales. Or it can also ask me or suggest or nudge me, do you want me to suggest a specific action plan that actually makes sense in this context? So again, like, it's making it a very seamless and easy new habit to actually use this technology as my fingerprint. So I think that's like the really powerful combination of staying in the interface, having the contextual data, but then also to some extent like nudging users to actually use the AI capabilities in the most powerful way. So
awesome. No, that makes perfect sense. It's been really incredible to see the pace at which you and the team have integrated all of these AI capabilities across the Leapsome experience. Can you give us just a sneak peek in terms of what's next on your AI roadmap?
yeah. So this is maybe somewhat high level, but we're very focused on further expanding what types of contextual data we can actually make available, and thereby also making sure that we generate even better responses, like constantly improving the responses that the AI agents can give to the user in specific contexts, and really building out these further smart actions and proposed questions, because they're so powerful in really making the technology accessible to a whole bunch of people. And we deeply care, and that's very much linked to also our purpose of making work fulfilling for everyone. We deeply care to support managers along every step of the process to become truly effective managers, thereby driving high-performing teams. And we truly care about our HR professionals to also support them in building out true HR excellence. So this is why we really think ahead. What might they need? What might they sort of like anticipating kind of like how additional queries agents could actually support them. So this is kind of what our ambition is, to make like them the most powerful version of themselves they can truly be. And that's really why we're working to becoming sort of like building the perfect sort of proactive co-pilots for the managers and HR teams alike throughout the entire platform.
Amazing. I love that vision. Maybe one final question, your hot take: will AI actually replace the role of managers one day?
Okay, I actually don't think that's anytime near where we are right now. I think managing people will continue to be a deeply human skill, and also like human connection is very important in managing someone for an HR team to truly have empathy with, understand, and best build out the organization, because there's a lot of best practices, but at the end of the day, there's also like slight differences within organizations that are so important to make any kind of organization successful. At the same time, when we actually did our research, nearly half of individual contributors actually expressed discomfort and citing concerns about job security, being concerned about AI in the workplace. So I think we really need to also embrace these conversations and help people understand what can be done and what cannot be done, and how we truly just collaborate also with this kind of technology. And I think, again, like for managers and HR professionals in particular, I think the roles will be significantly more enabled thanks to AI. It's going to help take more administrative work maybe off our plates. It's going to help us to synthesize, work with data in a much faster way, take better decisions. So I think it's actually going to be good for the workload challenges that we've mentioned before. And I think it's going to truly, I think we all need to learn to leverage the technology and work with it in the most effective way, but it's not going to replace managers anytime soon. And I think for HR, I think the exciting opportunity is to not just be a business partner, but to truly be a value driver to the business. As we discussed, like getting high-performing team and cultures right is incredibly powerful to drive not just the success of the business, but also the value of the business. So I think it can help managers and HR people to become true value drivers for the business.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for joining us. And for those who tuned in, we hope that you enjoyed the session, and we hope that we'll see many of you at ScaleUp AI on November 12th.
Yes, really excited about that. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you.